It was Cinco de Mayo, a time to celebrate friends, family, and your heritage. 3 Mexican-American families got together to spend the day. But what started out as a celebration ended in a nightmare. If you like this type of content, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear from you. My name is Dmitry Gurovich, Mr. G, and this is my spot. I've been a criminal defense lawyer for almost 30 years, and I got stories. So sit back, relax, and welcome to my world. It was a quiet suburban neighborhood, but it was Cinco de Mayo, and so everybody was having fun. The grill was hot, the tequila and the beer were flowing. It was a great day, but by sundown, 3 men were in handcuffs, and one was facing being ripped away from his wife and his kids forever. What happened? A Colt .357 Magnum Python revolver, and a very bad decision. That's what happened. Jose, the homeowner, was showing off the gun to his buddies. He just got it. It's Colt Python. This thing is legendary. They were all looking at it, opening the cylinder up, spinning it, closing it back up, and then they made the decision to fire the revolver. So let me introduce you to today's sponsor, Kaminsky Boxing Gym. Now, this is not a fitness boxing place. This is an actual fighter's gym. This is where you go to learn the sweet science of boxing. They've been around for many years, and they know what they're doing. This is where I train. This is where I go to get my ass handed to me. This place has everything you need. All the bags, an actual boxing ring, treadmills, ellipticals, step machines, and weights. They train everybody from kids to weekend warriors like me to professional boxers. They're located in Tarzana, California. Give them a shot. You won't regret it. So, Jose's house, the back of it, the backyard, is facing a dirt mountain. And right in front of that dirt mountain, there is a cement retaining wall made out of cement blocks, about waist high. So what the guys did was they set up a bucket of water right up against this retaining wall. They took about 10 paces back and they fired off a couple of rounds each, nothing more. And then they went back to drinking beer and talking about stuff and forgot about the Colt Python. But their neighbor did not. He ended up calling the cops because he heard gunshots. The cops were there literally in minutes, handcuffed all 3 of the guys, and took them away. As far as they were concerned, they were not doing anything wrong. They set up a bucket of water which would dissipate the energy of the bullets. The bucket of water was placed immediately up to the retaining wall, and there was a dirt mountain right on the other side of the retaining wall. But nevertheless, the DA's office charged them with negligent discharge of a firearm as a felony and child endangerment as a felony. The offer to settle the case from the DA's office was 3 years in prison. Now, keep in mind that none of the guys had any criminal record whatsoever. This was their first arrest. And all 3 come from hardworking families. Everybody's got a wife, kids, they're all employed in the construction business, they have homes, they pay taxes. These are just normal, everyday people that did a stupid thing. But 3 years for something like this is absolutely ridiculous. But there's more. You see, Jose did not have a green card. He only had a work permit. And so if he would have gotten a conviction for a felony that's related to firearms and child endangerment, he probably would have been out of here. He would have been deported. And so Jose came to me for help. Up until that point, his attorney and the attorneys that represented the other 2 guys were telling all 3 of them to take the offer of 3 years. Can you imagine? 3 years for something. I mean, this is dumb, right? What they did was dumb. But it wasn't really criminal in the sense that they weren't shooting into a crowd, God forbid. They weren't shooting into the house. They were shooting into a bucket of water up against a retaining wall, up against a dirt mountain. Okay? Yes, it's criminal conduct, but not worth 3 years. So when I went to court, I sat down with the prosecutor and I said, why exactly is my client being charged with felony negligent discharge of a firearm? I mean, at best, this should be a misdemeanor. And felony child endangerment, what's that all about? Well, the prosecutor said, look, they were shooting away from the house, yes, but the bullet could have ricocheted and killed one of the kids inside the house. I go, have you ever shot a gun before? Pistol, revolver, anything. You have any idea what you're talking about? They were shooting into a bucket of water, which was up against a retaining wall made out of cement blocks with a dirt mountain behind it. How exactly was this bullet going to ricochet from what? Do you understand how much energy the bullet carries? Do you know the bullets that they were shooting, how many grains these bullets were? You see, the bullet, or a bullet, I should say, consists of 3 parts. There's the nose, which contains the bullet itself. That's the part that flies out of the pistol or a revolver in this case. The shell, right, which is the back of it, which is left over in the cylinder of the revolver or flies out of a pistol or a rifle. And there's gunpowder in between that's ignited. Pressure builds up, and that's what ejects the bullet forward. Now, depending on how much gunpowder is inside this bullet, that dictates how fast and with what velocity this bullet flies and how much power it delivers to the target once it hits it. So I asked the prosecutor, what kind of bullets were these? Well, I don't know. Okay, what do you mean you don't know? If you're saying that this thing is going to ricochet, don't you think you need to know with what velocity the bullet was flying, how much energy was carrying? How much energy would the water inside the bucket dissipate once the bullet hits it and flies through? What about the retaining wall? Do you think this bullet can go through the retaining wall and bury itself in the dirt behind it? Or would it fly off? At what angle? With what power? He had no idea. This guy has never held a gun in his life. I go, look, we got to talk to the judge. This is just not right. So we go into chambers, and I sit down with the judge, with the prosecutor, and the other 2 lawyers, and they all look at me like I just discovered America. I'm Christopher Columbus over here, you know? I'm telling them, guys, listen to me. And I tell them exactly the same thing. A bullet consists of, this and that. You need to understand how much gunpowder was in there. What's the trajectory of the bullet? What's the angle at which it needs to fly out to go back into the house to kill somebody, God forbid, right? Nobody knows anything whatsoever. These people have not held guns in their lives, never fired them. I go, listen to me. I go shooting all the time, right? I shoot at metal targets. You would think that a bullet would ricochet off of a metal target somehow, right? But somehow it doesn't. Why? Why is that, right? They had no understanding, no clue, zero. So I turn to the judge. I go, Judge, listen to me. This is not a felony negligent discharge of a firearm, and this is not a felony child endangerment case. This is a misdemeanor negligent discharge. At best, he looked at the prosecutor and he said, you know what? I think I agree with the defense counsel. Have you spoken with any experts? And the prosecutor's like, no. Have you spoken with any of the officers regarding bullets and this particular revolver, how fast the bullet flies out, with what power, velocity, energy, etc.? The prosecutor looked at the judge, not even understanding what the guy was talking about. The end result was a plea to a misdemeanor, not a felony, negligent discharge of a firearm. So let me tell you a little bit about negligent discharge of a firearm in California. Now that statute is actually a wobbler. What's a wobbler? A wobbler is a violation of the statute that can be charged as a misdemeanor or as a felony. So this was a wobbler, and they decided to charge this as a felony. And what we did is we knocked it down to a misdemeanor. The difference between the two is night and day. Felonies are serious cases, and misdemeanors, not so much in comparison, right? And so the maximum on a misdemeanor is a year in county jail. The maximum in a felony is 3 years in state prison. Why is this supposed to be a misdemeanor and not a felony? Well, let me tell you. First of all, there's no actual harm that occurred, right? Then that's very important, because if somebody sustained any injuries as a result of these guys firing the Colt Python, then this would very likely remain a felony. Also, the direction they were shooting at and the fact that there was a water bucket, a retaining wall, and a mountain, right? That's a big deal. They weren't shooting into the house. They were shooting away from the house, right? That's another mitigating factor. There's also no malicious intent. They had no intent to hurt anybody whatsoever. What they were doing might have been stupid, but it wasn't malicious, right? Plus, not a single one of these guys had a criminal record. My argument that this was completely overcharged really struck a chord with the judge. And that's why this whole thing got reduced to a misdemeanor. The other part of it was safety courses and some community service. So safety courses with respect to firearms and 30 days of community service, okay, which you can break up. You can do 2 days here, 3 days there, another day this week, etc. They give you about 6 months to do it in, and if you need more time, they usually give you another 6 months without any problems. Now, question is, why were they asking for 3 years in state prison? Why were they trying to max out these guys? The answer is in the next charge, child endangerment. So what is child endangerment? That statute says that if you do something that endangers the safety or life of a child, you potentially may be guilty of violating the statute. Now, this particular one carries, as a felony, carries punishment of 2, 4, or 6 years in state prison. It also carries $10,000, up to $10,000 in fines, and has aggravating factors. Now, what are aggravating factors? These are situational factors that enhance, make the punishment more severe. So these are prior conviction for child abuse, injury to a child, use of drugs or firearms in the child's presence, and that's what applies here, and conduct that shows repeated or extreme disregard for safety. Also possibly could apply. But again, we got rid of this. It wasn't on the table after the judge agreed with my arguments. The other two defendants followed suit. The prosecutor handed out an offer of a misdemeanor to my client. He had to do the same thing for the others. So after we take the plea, we walk out into the hallway. My guy hugs his family, his kids, and he drops to his knees, literally in the hallway of the courthouse, and starts praying to God. And then he gets up and he comes up to me and he gives me the strongest hug I've ever felt in my life, I think. At that moment, it occurred to me again why I do this. I don't do this to prove a point. I don't do this to make millions of dollars. I do this to help people. And that day, in that courthouse, in that hallway, it all made sense to me. I saved his family, and that's a good feeling. Come back next time for more interesting stories. If you like this type of content, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear from you. My name is Dmitry Gurovich, Mr. G. This is my spot, and these are my stories.